Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2.
What is this, Monday, January 9th? It's 6 PM, and I call to order this regular and organizational meeting of the Anthony Wayne Board of Education. Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Here.
Mrs. Brent?
Here.
Mrs. Gwynn? Here. Mr. Lutz?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Unlike the school calendar, which is July 1 to June 30, our board calendar is a regular calendar year. So this is like our beginning of the year, and so we do all of our organizational, what am I trying to say? Minutia. First things, yes. First thing we need is to elect a board president, and I need nominations.
Move to nominate Pam Brent as president.
All right, thank you.
I'll second.
And Troy, that was Kyle and Troy. Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes?
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Okay, and second item is nominations for a vice president.
Move to elect Mr. Baden as vice president.
Kyle, and a second, please.
I'll second that as well.
And Troy on that one. All right, Carrie, would you please call roll on that?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes?
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
All right, and so I guess we're going to do our oath so we can proceed in an official matter.
Just be careful with the cord over there.
Oh,
On the floor.
I'll be the one to trip
So,
over. Trip over Carrie's chair.
Do you solemnly affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States? Sorry, I'll start over. Do you solemnly affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as President and Vice President of the Anthony Wayne Local School District, Lucas County, Ohio, to the best of your abilities and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified? If so, answer, I do. I do. Congratulations, President. Mr. Vice President.
Congratulations, Jeff. All right. Next item is establishing our meetings for this calendar year. There's an attachment on there. Has everybody had a chance to look at that? And if conflicts come up, which sometimes they do throughout the year, we can make adaptations as needed. So, yeah, we've still got a couple other things we're not approving that yet. Next item is standing authorizations, which we have that list, which is typically like our legal, authorizing Carrie to make payments in certain needs, payments of bills, allowing Jim to act on our behalf when we're not, we won't be having a meeting to make it in time to do hiring, things like that. Organizations that we belong to, from all of us on the professional side, et cetera. So, anyone have any questions on anything like that? Any of the standing authorizations? Okay. School attorney service, that is separate. So that's being able to, we have a list of, was there 6? 1, 2, I can't,
Yeah,
I think it's six different firms that, depending, some are specialize in certain areas of the law, so we,
Rickler and Eckler is the one that we use the most
Typically,
in the
yeah.
sense of general counsel for a variety of things that involve the district and legal items. We'll use them as a part of our negotiations process here in the spring with both unions. There's other services depending on specialties, different areas and so forth that you see the other firms for. Sometimes we don't use one of those firms, but that we have it as an option, just depending on the situation specifically. There are times where Rickler and Eckler may represent both parties somehow, some way, like in construction and things like that. So then we have to go to another firm and that other company does as well, so that they're not in conflict there as well. So there are those type of things that happen.
membership of the board, that's in the Ohio School Board Association. And the last thing is committee assignments, which is attached also. And that is, we've got two members on curriculum and instruction, board policy, transportation, buildings and grounds, athletic council, finance audit, and then delegates to the OSBA. That we meet once a year in Columbus at our yearly meeting and develop the legislative platform for the OSBA. Any questions on anything? Okay. I need a motion to adopt, or motion to approve, all of the aforementioned
After in each.
items. Is it, yeah,
D3.
D through
Or
H.
D3, yeah.
D through H, yeah.
I'll move to approve.
Kyle?
A second.
And a sec, Gina? And Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
All right, and that was the end of our organizational part of our meeting tonight, and we will move on to the minutes from our December 12th meeting. If you've all had an opportunity to read that, and if there's any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I need a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll move to approve.
Jeff, and a second, please.
I'll second.
Troy. And Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
All right. Treasurer's report and financial. Carrie?
Thank you. First item on the agenda is to approve the December 2022 financial reports as presented. Just, I'll highlight one thing. Well, it's not really a highlight, but it's maybe provide a little peace of mind. If you looked at the cash summary, you'll notice our unencumbered cash balance was a negative, and that is an actual scenario at this time. It's very common. We still have about $15 million coming from Lucas County Auditor. So based on the way they pay, as people pay their taxes, we'll get an advance or two. So I'm hoping to have full collections within the next 45 days of those funds. So it's always a little touch and go. I'm usually transferring funds out of some of our investments to cover those and to meet payroll this time of year, but it's normal, and I just didn't want it to alarm. Jim was a little alarmed, like, hey. He came back from Christmas break and was like, I noticed a few things happened, so just so you have peace of mind that is normal, and it isn't unencumbered. I mean, we have a lot encumbered that, we encumber fuel for the whole year for our buses or like our utilities. So there's a lot that is encumbered that we're not spending at this.
At this moment.
Yes. So just to provide peace of mind. Donations, I ask that you approve those. You can see we've had several donations donated to our food service to help with unpaid fees, but we are appreciative of all donations. Under item C is an annual renewal to the Ohio Education Policy Institute. This membership is $1,500. And then the last item I have is to approve the Lyle disposal request per their letter dated December 13th. I'll just remind you that we approved this because we serve as a fiscal agent. Funds come through the district and go out, but anytime any of the non-publics in our district, whether it be Monclova Christian, Discovery Express, and Lyell, they would apply for items to be disposed of. And I do all the reporting for it, so, but that's why I put this on there. So it happens a couple times a year, but I'd just like to remind why we do that. And other than that, that was all I had.
Okay. Could you, with Troy and Kyle kind of being new here, tell us what the OEPI is?
That is just a membership that we.
I mean, what they do for us, I guess.
Yeah, well, they're basically an advocate for public education.
They do a lot of research, and then they have an advocate at the state level with legislators. It allows us to have a voice, another voice, when we're trying to advocate for our specific school district, because many of the areas that they're talking about are really just school funding, and that's their primary focus. And a lot of very prominent people that have worked in education for many years are a part of that and do that research. And I think it's very valuable in supporting that so that it helps us have a voice at that, like I said, that state level.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Carrie? All right, I need a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll move to approve items A through D as proposed.
Troy, and a second, please.
I'll second.
Jana. All right, Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, superintendent's educational reports and recommendations.
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to recognize the board. January is Ohio School Board's Recognition Month, and we would like to thank you for your service. Obviously, at your desk, you see something from Ohio School Boards Association thanking you for your service. 20 years in this school district, I'll be at the end of this year, 20 years, 13 as superintendent. I think the last couple of years that you all have experienced being a board member is probably the most interesting time of that whole tenure of 20 years in this district. And I've had some interesting things happen along the way, as many of these people in here could tell you, that have been in front of the board. And I think, with COVID and other things, we just appreciate the fact that you choose to do this. You choose to be here for the students and the staff of this school district. So I can't thank you enough for that service and how much we appreciate it, that you choose to be here and do this, even though some days aren't the greatest, and sometimes you're ridiculed in the community and maybe not celebrated enough in what you do. But we do appreciate what you do, and we thank you for your service to the district. I just wanted to share that with you. As we look forward to 2023, I shared through a newsletter that we're excited. We're very excited about the fact that I believe, as Kevin and I have talked, and we've talked with staff and we've talked to administrators, it's a mid-year time where we haven't felt like this in a few years. There's a lot of great work done in the first semester to get us to this point by our staff and our administrators and our students and our parents. We're coming off of unprecedented events, and the academic interventions and opportunities to get students back to where they were and where they needed to be as far as grade level and competencies and so forth. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end of my report. The work has been phenomenal. And I can't thank our staff enough. I can't thank our administrators enough for what they have done with working with our students and our parents and our community to get our kids to where they need to be. And I'm really looking forward to 2023. I think having the strategic plan, having the strategies now to work on our goals, the portrait of a general and what that can do to help us get our students future ready, and just some of the intricacies of what we do in our district to help our students be prepared for life as well as for their careers, whatever they choose to do after they graduate from high school. I'm just looking forward to this year because I think there's a lot of positive momentum going into this new year. And so, I'm not a big one on resolutions, but I am a big one on focusing in on what can we do to evolve and get better each and every year. And so I think like I said, we have a lot of momentum within those items, and Mr. Herman and Mr. Connor here are going to present some information to you, so I'll turn it over to you in discussing that. Do you guys need the microphone too?
We have loud voices.
Those on the
Yeah.
thing better.
The online, yeah.
Yeah, the online piece.
Yeah. Mr. Herman, do you need some help?
No. I can't tell what's going on.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Fritz. That was a great segue into what Mr. Herman and I wanted to share this evening. And don't worry, I think if we really hustle, we can get everybody home for the second half of the national championship game following this presentation.
Always thinking of us.
Yeah.
That's right, that's right. So, as Miss, correct.
He didn't have to.
So as Mr. Herman's wrestling with the technology, I think I'll just kind of get started here a little bit. As Dr. Fritz just mentioned in his comments, over the last several years, the district's gone through a number of initiatives to really focus in on student learning and what our students need to experience through their K-12 education to become future ready. As we all know, the world is drastically changed and is changing rapidly as we speak. And so we really want to focus in on how do we make sure that our students, through their experiences at Anthony Wayne Local Schools, how do we prepare them for those challenges that they'll face when they leave our buildings? So today, this evening, we want to talk a little bit about what we are doing as a district, as an administrative team, and then we'll also be working with our teachers on this to merge our portrait of a general competencies with our strategic plan to create future-ready students. As you remember, and I know a lot of the people in this room were involved in our portrait of a general process, several years ago, with the help of Battelle for Kids, we brought a wide variety of members of our community together to really begin to talk about and formulate what are some of the things that our kids need to be productive members of our community. And so through those community meetings and our partnership with Battelle for Kids, we developed our portrait of a general and our 5 competencies: empathy, learner's mindset, communication and collaboration, critical thinking, and adaptability and flexibility. Following the development of the portrait of a general, our principals then worked with their staffs throughout the district to develop what we call our student, teacher, and administrator actions. So what are the things that we can be looking for? What are the things that we all can demonstrate on a daily basis that help our students achieve learning in these competency areas?
And then I'll share with you that over this past year, we took that information and that process that we used, and then we used that for our strategic plan. And we really wanted the strategic plan to be something that we used as a district, that was something that was, we all understood, we all believed in, and that we all used in order to make ourselves better. So through the process of the Portrait of a General, we tried to do the same thing with the strategic plan. We had a lead team meeting where we all came together. We had a certain number of individuals that came together, identified other individuals, leaders within the community, stakeholders that were important to be involved in this process. And we met with them, and they went out then and they talked with many, many individuals through their homes. They had meetings that they had questions about this, the way we did things, our policies, our procedures, things that they would like to see, where we were going in the future, and so forth. So we gathered a lot of input from them. We worked then to kind of take what they said, what community said, what staff had said, what students had said, and it was very impressive with what the students did say. In the strategic planning, when we met as a group, I think the time when the students spoke, I would say, is when everyone listened the most. And what they had to say was actually so important to how we move forward as a district. So they took that, and then we developed a plan. With that, our strategic plan. And from that, we had our mission, our vision, and then we established some goals in the area of student learning, curriculum and instruction, community engagement, resources of student success, and students and staff ready to learn. So those are the areas that we found, from all of the work that we had done, that we found needed to be kind of the categories that we focused on to move our district forward in the future. And so after we had those as our goals, we developed strategies. And those strategies basically were in each area, and it would give us direction on how we would move forward with that. So then what we got from all of these things, from their strategic plan, is we determined that it was going to be necessary to focus on academic rigor, okay? And we'd all expect that. Again, finding the commonalities between the Portrait of a Graduate and strategic planning. From all the feedback that we got, that we received through the process that we went through with those two initiatives, how would we combine those two to determine how to make our students future ready? Okay, because that was very important. It came out in the strategic plan. And the competencies that we determined in the Portrait of a Graduate or the Portrait of a General, and the goals that we established were that overlapping thing. We found that had to be very important characteristics that our students needed to have in order to be future ready and defining future ready. So that's what we really, really have worked on, and we kind of are using a little bit of part of the strategic plan with marching forward to be future ready. And so, you can go ahead and switch next one, Jim. And so what we did with that is we have really tried to focus this year with our administrative team on not coming to meetings where we are simply, talking about issues that we're having or planning the next thing that we have to do or talking about professional development. We've been trying to use our administrative meetings to really have strong discussions on how do we move the district forward, how do we find commonalities, and so that we are building, we set a foundation, and then we're able to build upon that through our K-12 program to get to where the end of our students, that we are very confident that they're leaving our district with the skills that they need to be successful. So what we really did is actually Dr. Fritz had gone out and spoken with some of the students. He had sent parent surveys, he asked staff surveys and so forth, and basically asked two questions. What are the skills needed for students to be prepared for after graduation? What does a teacher do to make a lesson motivating for students to learn? And again, the information that was gained through those conversations and those discussions with the students in the community really needed to be what we needed to hear and what we needed to be our focus in making our plan to move ahead. So what we've also done through our administrative work is all of the strategic plan goals and the strategies, we have then, as directors in each department, we've taken the time to meet and to develop goals and how each department will help move the district forward in reaching those goals. Each building principal has worked with his or her staff to determine what are we going to do in our building to help move the district forward in these areas. And then we've really worked hard to come together and discuss those things. In the recent meetings, we've really been focusing on what is it that we find to be an outstanding, what are the characteristics that we find to be an outstanding lesson or an exemplar lesson, and the things that we're looking for. And we're looking then and we're discussing those. We're discussing having building principals come in and share one that they had observed. And then they're going to be discussing, okay, now that we have these lessons, what are all the commonalities in these lessons? What are the, from the one that's they do in first grade to someone that they observe in 12th grade, what are the things that make that, the characteristics that make that a very strong lesson? And so we've been working together as administrators to kind of determine that, okay? And so that's our components of effective instruction, and we're trying to work towards moving that into an instructional framework. So just one quick more. And so the components of effective instruction, the things that we looked at when we were discussing that is we took the OTES 2.0 evaluation system because it's very important. That's what we use to evaluate our staff, so we needed to have those components in there. We looked at some articles, we watched some videos, but most importantly, we held discussions. And our discussions on the components of effective instruction, we actually would get in small groups, and we always tried to switch our groups around to have discussions and get different perspectives, and started listing, okay, what is it that we find to be an effective instruction? What are the components of it? And then how do we start integrating that? And through that, we are hoping to develop an instructional framework, which Mr. Conner will tell you about.
So as Mr. Herman was saying, the real goal here is to try to, through conversations, develop what we call an instructional framework. And what's really nice about our partnership with Battelle for Kids, which we have since the completion of the Portrait of a General, we have continued our partnership with Battelle. And we have a team in the district that meets with not only Battelle for Kids, but other school districts who have done work very similar to what we're doing now. And one of the components that a lot of districts work through who have done their Portrait of a Graduate, who has done some strategic planning around not only student learning, but all facets of the school district operation, is they have developed an instructional framework, which really is just a document, a plan that articulates our shared beliefs about teaching and learning, guides our approach to bringing the Portrait of a General and strategic plan to life in all of our classrooms by guiding decisions around curriculum, instruction, and assessment with that idea of creating those future-ready students. And so this is just a draft. This is just a sample of kind of what we are working towards. One of the things that we want to, one of the outcomes of this work would be to have this graphic, again, kind of that quick reference guide to guide conversations between district administrators, between teachers, between administrators and teachers, and so forth. And what we have worked on the last couple of months is really breaking down the components of effective instruction, from the planning phase to the teaching phase to the assessment phase, and then to the reflection phase. So how did that lesson go that day? Were the students engaged? Were they excited? What did my assessment data tell me? And so all of those components that blend not only the portrait of a general, the rigorous content, but but what is in that strategic plan as well. So again, the main outcome here in the near future for this work is to create that instructional framework to help guide us as a district.
And through the work that we've done, we've kind of established, you know, the 4 areas, the plan, teach, assess, and reflect. And so our future, you know, meetings and so forth, we're going to actually say, okay, in the planning stage, what does that look like? What do we expect in plan, you know, when we are having instructional leaders plan? You know, what do we expect with the teaching? So that's our next steps in this process, would be to kind of define what each of those would actually an expectation would be, or what we want in those areas, so that we can then have those conversations with the different teachers and so forth when we're meeting with them.
And you've already, I mean, Mr. Connor's already met with some teachers on this, right? Actually, several teachers on that framework and having discussions with them.
Yeah, we kind of preemptively teased this out to some teachers during some meetings I was having with them, and it's really eye-opening when you just ask questions to teachers about, you know, what are your key considerations in a lot of these different phases of what you're doing. And the really good news is that they're happy to share. They offer a lot of really good feedback. And so, as Mr. Herman said, once we have kind of our definitions or belief statements for each one of those areas, I think the next step would be then to share that with classroom teachers and pull in their feedback and voice, so that we have a really comprehensive view of what are our shared beliefs at Anthony Wayne Local Schools about planning a lesson, teaching that lesson, and then assessing that student learning, and then going back after that cycle's over and reflecting on the effectiveness of the overall lesson and learning experience.
And we truly believe that the portrait of a general was very, very important to this district. We believe the strategic plan is very, very important to this district. And what we're trying to do through this work is not make it one more thing or whatever, but to bring it all together to help people, to help all the staff members, community members, and so forth understand that this is what we're using, all of this information that we've gained through these 2 processes and so forth, to be able to accomplish the goals of the district and to make the students future ready. Any questions?
Great work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, guys. You know, we're excited about where can we go. Like I said, you know, excited about 2023, but where can this take us through collaborative conversations, especially with our staff, as we continue to gather feedback from students. I'm excited to see, after implementation of this, you know, what does that look like as far as engagement in the classroom and those types of things, and hearing that from students as well, including that student voice. So more to come, but we want to just kind of give you a little bit right now, and as we continue to develop this and move this forward, we'll have more to communicate in the future too.
And the focus that you've also shared is that, you know, continuity, we think continuity, but among the buildings is important, and to build and so forth. And I think by having the discussions that we're having, we're really discussing what's going on in each building and using, you know, similar vocabulary and trying to focus everything so that we do have as much commonality as we can, but then also allowing them to, each building to have its personality that it has.
Thank you.
Thank you. Facilities assessment, master planning update. I'm hoping, we're having conversations right now with the collaborative for them to come in February at the board meeting and present on their facilities assessment that they completed with the district. So more to come on that. I am currently going back and forth with the group on the enrollment study. Our attorney suggested some changes, and they suggested some changes, and so we're getting there on that contract. And then we're collaboratively, working with the collaborative on the surveys, to put out to the community and all stakeholders to gather more input on potential options moving forward. And then put those options together and, kind of finalize that, and that's when we'll take, I'll call it the road show, to the 3 primary buildings to get community input from the different areas, moving that forward. With the goal of finalizing this in spring, okay? That's our goal, moving forward. Academic interventions. I've had the opportunity to do some observations of meetings where our instructional coaches are meeting with our teachers. Typically, it's a grade level and maybe one teacher. They're talking about specific interventions they're doing with specific students based on our RTI, MTSS systems, where we're really looking at what can we do academically, potentially behaviorally, but mostly academically, on helping students move forward from where they're at individually and in their grade levels, in their primarily in language arts and then also in math, depending on the student. I was really impressed in the conversations. You'd be amazed, you sat down and listened to the conversations happening about the specific interventions, the data they're using, and how, if something's not working, that they are willing to change that, right? And try something else and moving that forward. And so I just wanted to mention that because, we had the ESSER money, it came in, and we've put a lot of money into providing intervention services to students. And we have seen progress in helping students move forward, and those individuals have done a great job, our teaching staff, but also the instructional coaches, of helping that move forward. So I just wanted to mention that I've had the opportunity through some observations to sit into some of those meetings, and they've been very, very good.
Real quick on that, how are we back to pre-COVID levels yet, or?
Well, I would tell you that's a hard
I'm
piece
sure, yeah, it is, I know,
Each
'cause
class is different from
Sure.
class to class and so forth. I would say that we still have work to do. Unprecedented educational experience over a 2-year period where we had remote learning, that I would say the best learning is in person. I personally believe that. I think that's the best way to learn. We had hybrid learning, we had in-person learning, we had the influence of massive sickness, whether it was flu-related, COVID-related, what have you, and all of that, and just that unrest feeling. And really, I don't think we've really escaped that until this year. I've had maybe 1 or 2 COVID conversations with parents.
That's good.
That's amazing
It's a
to
good
me.
sign, yeah.
Compared to, that would be maybe hourly
Right.
over the last 2 years. So that's, I think we've moved beyond that. Do we have sickness? We monitored flu sickness in December. We're still monitoring it now. The great news, based on coming back, we have a lot less kids that are missing in the first week and a half or so that we've been back. We'll continue to monitor that, but ultimately, I think there are some kids who we still need to move forward academically, and we'll continue to do that. One of the things too is that you really didn't think about was kids that weren't in school yet. And they didn't have that normal social interaction either, because maybe they missed preschool, and now they're in our primary buildings. And is there a social piece that's affecting the academics as well? And so you have some of that. And, there's all kinds of pieces to this of the best place to be educated is in the buildings on a daily basis, not only academically, but for them to have social interactions
Right.
with one another, their teachers, the staff here. And so there's still work to do moving forward.
Making improvements.
Yes. 23-24 curriculum guides. We had our curriculum meeting Mr. Les, we shared that information with you. Mrs. Brent, you were there. We talked about the minor changes in the curriculum guide for this upcoming year. So you've had time to hopefully review that today, as you had access to that. Educational agreements, you will see that one listed. There's only one there, for a specific student in a specific situation. Ohio School Council's resolution. Really what this does, it allows it, by doing this, you're allowing me the opportunity to vote on behalf of the district for, here's what's going on. OSC is a consortium that we use to purchase things at a cheaper rate, whether it be electricity, other products, and so forth. They've grown so much that their bylaws require them to meet in person to each year to do their voting and so forth. But they've grown so much across the state, it's hard to get enough of us there at one time.
Okay.
And so they want to change their bylaws. This allows them to have that meeting to change their bylaws so that it doesn't require all of us to be there at the same time, basically is what this is all about. So we're just asking that you approve that resolution at this time.
Okay.
So I would ask you at this time to approve A through D in one motion unless you have questions.
Anybody have anything?
No questions from me.
I will say on the curriculum, I've said this many, many times, I actually mentioned this to my kids after being in that meeting. When my kids were in school and I'd look at the curriculum guides, I would say, wow, I wish I could have taken this. And it's even, I even said to my kids, I think you would say that looking at these curriculum guides now, there's just some fantastic offerings that we are able to provide our students here. And I think that's great. So, if there's nothing else, I need a motion to approve A through D.
I'll move to approve.
Kyle? And a second, please.
I'll second.
Jana. Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes?
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Okay. And superintendent personnel recommendations.
Thank you. First item are resignations and retirements. We have some movement happening with two of the individuals. Obviously, having Matt Dick retire is a tremendous loss for the district, but a gain for him. You know, he has had 25 years of service to the district. And I'll just give you an example. Just many, many examples of things that he would do to go above and beyond in our school district. So on Christmas Eve, we had some water main issues with the cold weather and so forth, and water pipes breaking and so forth unexpectedly, even though we have our procedures in place for that not to happen. It did with those unprecedented temperatures. And so Matt and Brian Trzynski and the Chad, the engineer there, had to clean up classrooms, you know, hours and hours and hours of getting water off the floors and dealing with that and so forth. And then we had, that was at the junior high, and then at the high school we had some issues, Waterville we had some issues, and so that's just a testament, just one example of many, many examples of him going above and beyond, you know, his normal duties to do what's best for the district.
I'm hoping that's not what made him decide to retire.
You're not saying anything.
But, you know, tremendous loss for the district, but I'm very happy for Matt and, you know, all the different things that he has been involved in for the district. I told him he's going to need me to be on a speed dial because he's got so much history of the buildings and what we have done and so forth. You know, I think about my 20 years here and him only being here 5 more years, but it feels like he's been here for 40 more years than me. Just with his institutional knowledge of the community and the district and so forth. And so, can't thank him enough for what he has done for the district, so. Item B, employment. You see that we have a bus driver we're adding, so that's always a good day in the district, right, Tammy? just hiring a bus driver, so it's always good. Always a good day. And then obviously we have 3 other individuals that we're hiring at this time for different positions. Item C, substitute employees as listed there for various positions. We always appreciate substitutes and their involvement in our district. Contract addendums as listed there in item D for those individuals. So I'd ask that you approve A through D in one motion at this time unless you have questions.
I'll move to approve as proposed.
Okay, Troy
And I'll second.
and Kyle. Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Oh, okay, do we have some?
Yes.
All right. Okay, that's what I thought it was. Okay, at this time, we will take any comments from visitors, and we did have Mr. Kowalski that signed up beforehand. If you'd like to, yeah, just, you can get the microphone from him and just tell us your name.
Yeah, Bill Tucholsky. And I'd just like to say that from time to time, when I look at the agendas for these meetings, something piques my interest, and I'll call the board office, and the secretary or receptionist have always been very polite, friendly, take down specific questions I have, and I've always had responses, if they're financial, from Carrie, or more curricular, academic arenas from Kevin. So I appreciate your responsiveness to the public's inquiries. The only suggestion I would make, though, is that the agendas are posted. I don't know if you know this, but the meetings are Monday. I can't look at the agenda until Sunday, which is 24 hours before. And I understand you like to have some flexibility to add things, but maybe just a day or two just to look at those things and do some research would be helpful if you're looking at different protocols for the upcoming. But in this case, I saw there were going to be some suggested changes to the curriculum. So Kevin called, he directed me to the website, and I started doing some navigating. I went into the Ohio standards, and there's a lot in there, but there was nothing in there that, to me, my background was in social studies and English, so I looked specifically at those, and I didn't see anything that was out of kilter or anything. And then I went to the high school offerings, and like Pam, you mentioned, I was really impressed with across the board for higher level students and electives, critical thinking. It's all in there, so I was pleased to see what I did see. And I also learned that with the state of Ohio, there's periods where they invite public comments and online surveys. So if you have an interest in just following along, having some input, and I don't know how to exactly get those or know when they're available, but it's something you might want to look into. I also saw that there was it's called subscription request, and they must have had, I don't know, 75 different check boxes. If you're interested in agricultural education or school financing, they have bulletins and updates and revisions, and you can be asked to get email information on those specific areas from time to time. I hope I don't regret I checked too many boxes and I'm going to get all this email. I may have to unsubscribe from some of those, but it's available and it's out there. So just behind the scenes, things that we can do as residents to stay up to date, I would just point out. And I guess with that, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. It's on the list. Is there anyone else has anything? If not, at this point, I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss employment and negotiations of public employees.
I'll move to go into executive session.
Kyle, and a second, please.
I'll second.
Jana. And Carrie, would you please call roll?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwynn?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
All right, and we have no other items on our agenda. The only thing we'll do is come out and adjourn our meeting. You're welcome to stay if you want to wait for that, but you're also welcome to go too. And our next meeting is February 26th, yes,
6 o'clock.
at 6 PM. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We are back from executive session. I need a motion to return to our regular set time.
I'll move to make that motion.
Kyle, and second?
Second.
Jeff, I couldn't remember your
I would
name.
say fight for it.
And it is what, 7:30?
Yes.
Coin flip, right?
Mr. Baden?
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwen?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Okay, and now a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
And Jan, okay. Carrie, would you please call up?
Mr. Baden?
Yes.
Mrs. Brent?
Yes.
Mrs. Gwen? Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Thank
Thank you.